All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this afternoon's or today's Tertiary Information Service VTAC application session. My name's Barney. I'm from the Tertiary Information Service, or TIS for short. I also work at a university, but for today, I'm representing TIS. So TIS is a collective of universities and higher education institutions across Victoria. And basically we collaborate to help high school students understand all of their options post high school and make sure that you're making an educated decision when it comes to your next steps after high school. The other person on the screen there joining me today is Michael from VTAC. He will be delivering the majority of today's presentation. But before we do jump in, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're presenting from today, the Wurundjeri people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that to any Indigenous peoples who are tuned into today's session. So the format for today's session, as we mentioned, we've got Michael from VTAC who will run us through the application process and all the ins and outs about what you might need to know when it comes to applying for university or other education through the VTAC system. We've then got some time at the end for some questions and answers. So if you do have any questions, make sure that you use the Q&A function, which I'm sure we're all very well versed in now in Zoom. So that should be at the bottom of your screen if you do have any questions. We've also got some staff in the background who will be answering those as well. So we'll do our best to get to all of those throughout. So without further ado, I might hand over to you, Michael. Thanks very much for being here today.
Thanks, Barney, for the introduction, and also to the Tertiary Information Service for hosting today's session. It's a great opportunity to have both me and my colleague Helen from VTAC, as well as you've got at least 3 universities represented here with TIS staff members. So we do really encourage you to ask questions as we go through by just popping those into the Q&A. So I'll get started now by maybe answering one question you might have, which is, what actually is VTAC? You've probably heard the term VTAC if you're in year 12, but you might not know exactly who we are. So VTAC is a non-profit agency that's owned by all the universities and most of the TAFEs and colleges in Victoria, and we process the applications on their behalf. So if you're in year 12, you won't be applying individually to the University of Melbourne or Monash or RMIT. You'll be applying once through VTAC with preferences for all the different courses across the state. VTAC's other role is to calculate the Atar for all VCE students. I won't talk about the Atar too much today, but if you'd like some more information on how the Atar is calculated, you can access that at the VTAC website. What we'll do in this session is go through the VTAC process all the way from finding courses through to actually getting an offer. I've got some key dates here on the screen just to give you an idea of when in the year things happen. Don't worry too much about remembering these or copying them down. It's just to give you a bit of an overview of when things happen. All of these dates are on our website. So as a bit of a bird's eye view or a guide, everything starts at the beginning of August. That's when you can go online and make your account at the VTAC website, which you'll use to apply. It's really important that you do that by the 30th of September. If you don't apply by that date, you might have to pay a late fee, or you will have to pay a late fee, I should say. If you're applying for special consideration or scholarships as part of your application, you'll need to make sure you finalise this and any supporting documentation by the 8th of October, about 2 weeks later. Once that's done, you're kind of done with the application process, and we can fast forward to mid-December, which is when your Atar comes out if you're doing the VCE. Once your Atar comes out, you've got about 36 hours to change your preferences if you want to, and then the offers for courses come out in December, January, and throughout February as well. So all of those dates are on our website, but that's a bit of a preview for you. Everything kicks off in about 2 weeks on the 2nd of August. So let's start off by thinking about how you actually find courses to study. All of the universities, TAFEs and colleges have their own websites, which are a great source of information and often give you some really detailed insights into the courses. But VTAC Course Search is a really useful place to start searching, because VTAC Course Search is searching across all the Victorian courses all in one place. So you can access this from our website at vtac.edu.au. And if you type in, for example, teaching in VTAC Course Search, that will show you all the different teaching courses that are available in Victoria at all the different universities, TAFEs and colleges. So it's a really great place to do that comparison and get an overview of courses. When you're looking in VTAC course search, you'll see courses at a whole bunch of different levels. In Australia, we tend to break up the tertiary courses into two sectors: the VET, or Vocational Education and Training, on the left in blue, and Higher Education in red on the right. You can apply for all these types of courses through VTAC. When you're looking at courses, you might be looking at VET courses, which are usually a little bit shorter, so maybe a year for a diploma or 2 years for an advanced diploma. And the VET courses are often specifically focused on a particular occupation or job or a practical skill. So they're a great way of getting that skill knowledge really quickly and getting straight to work if that's your goal. The higher education courses on the right tend to be a bit longer. So for example, 3 years for a bachelor degree. Some of these higher education courses are focused on particular occupations or jobs, but others are more broadly about other theoretical knowledge. And the learning styles can be different between VET and higher education. There's no correct answer for which is better or which is more appropriate for you. It just depends on what you're hoping to achieve with your qualification. If you're looking to get to work as quickly as possible with some practical skills, a VET course is probably the fastest way there. If you're looking for some more in-depth theoretical knowledge, then that might be a bachelor degree in higher education. When you are looking at different types of courses, it is good to keep in mind the idea of a pathway course. A pathway course is one course, let's say, for example, a diploma, that then leads on to another course. In this example, a bachelor degree. So let's say, for example, you were thinking of doing a Bachelor of Accounting, but you weren't sure about getting in, or you weren't sure if you wanted to commit to 3 years doing accounting. What you might do is start off with a diploma, which would take you 1 year to complete. At the end of that year, you've got that completed diploma, which you can use to go to work, or you could use that diploma to apply for the bachelor degree, in most cases get credit for the work that you've done already, and finish the rest of the bachelor degree in 2 years. So you haven't lost any time or spent any extra time, but you've gained the ability to exit after 1 year with that completed qualification. So if you are looking at bachelor degrees, it's a useful question to ask of each university: what pathways might you suggest that lead to this course? So you'll see all these types of courses on VTAC course search, and you can mix and match them on your preferences as you'd like to. When you do look at VTAC course search, you'll see a whole list of courses, and you can click on any of them to open this page, which shows you more information about each specific course. And this information is provided by the university, TAFE, or college. So a lot of it is pretty self-explanatory, like the name of the course, how many years it takes to complete, which campus it's on, a bit of a description of the course, and so on. But there are 2 areas that I want to talk about a bit more because they're really important. The first one is called the essential requirements and the admission criteria. And this basically tells you what you have to do to be eligible for this course, because every course in Victoria has their own requirements for, first of all, how to make sure you can get in, and second of all, how they're deciding who gets in if it's competitive. For courses that use the Atar as part of that process, there's also a section called the Atar Profile, which you can take a look at. And that basically tells you how hard it might be to get in based on the Atar, how competitive that particular course is. So I'm going to talk more about both of these sections now, starting off with the essential requirements and the admission criteria. As I mentioned, every course can set their own criteria, and these are often quite specific to the course's own content and requirements. So for example, a drama course might require that you do an audition, or a medicine course might want you to go to an interview to see if you have those kinds of skills. Whatever the requirements are, you'll always see those published in advance on the VTAC site in that course information. So you'll know what's required, and you'll see instructions on how to complete them. I'll highlight just a few of these, particularly some of the common ones, starting off with prerequisites, which are really common. All the university courses have prerequisites. These are specific VCE subjects that you must have completed to be eligible for that course. Most commonly English, but you may also see some maths and sciences in some other cases. If the course has prerequisites, these are compulsory. So if the course requires, for example, maths methods, and you haven't done maths methods, you would not receive an offer for that course, even if your ATAR was 99.95. So it is really important that you check the prerequisites to make sure you're eligible for the courses that you're applying for. If you're looking at doing some particular areas of study, you might need to take a test, for example, the UCAT test for medicine. One thing to look out for if you're thinking of doing teaching or some nursing courses is an online test called the CASPER test, which is not an academic test. It's looking out for things like empathy and ethics and professionalism and all those other qualities that we want teachers to have. So if you are looking at doing teaching, keep an eye out for that one. Some of the requirements that you see are not compulsory. They're just a way to get a bit of a bonus, a bit of an edge in terms of applying for the course. And a really common one of these for Year 12s is something called subject adjustments. And these are basically where a course says, if you've done some of these particular VCE subjects that are relevant, we'll give you a couple of extra points for this particular course. They're different from prerequisites because they're not compulsory. You can still get in without them. But if you have done them, you get a bit of a boost that makes it more likely you'll get in. So there's heaps of different requirements that might exist because they're all set by each individual course, but you will always see them spelled out for you on the VTAC site. So you'll know in advance what you have to do. The next section that I want to talk about is called the Atar Profile. But before I can explain that, I need to talk a bit about how selection actually works. So in Victoria, for most courses, it's competitive to get in. There are more people applying for the course than there are places in that course. So they're going to use those criteria that they've published, like the ATAR and those adjustments, to work out who gets in for those limited places. So I want to show you an example now of a course that's got 6 people applying for 4 available offers. And what they're going to do at the end of the year is go through all their applicants and give them a rank. This course is using the ATAR and also taking into account special consideration through Cs, which we'll talk about a bit later on, and giving out some of those subject adjustments as well. So starting at the top here, we've got Mel with an ATAR of 95. Mel does not receive any adjustments. So Mel's ATAR is the same as her, Mel's selection rank rather, is the same as her ATAR of 95. Next up is Jerry with an ATAR of 90. Jerry has done one of those published relevant VCE subjects, so her selection rank of 94 is higher than her ATAR of 90. Next, we have Victoria with an ATAR of 85. Victoria does not receive any adjustments, so her selection rank is the same as her ATAR of 85. Emma, ATAR of 80. Again, no adjustments for her, so her selection rank is also the same as her ATAR of 80. Next up, we have AJ with an ATAR of 75. AJ has applied for and received special consideration and has also done one of those relevant subject adjustments. So his selection rank of 86 is significantly higher than his ATAR of 75. And last of all, we've got Howie, ATAR of 70, no adjustment factors, so Howie's selection rank is also 70. And that process is going on for every single course that you apply for, regardless of what preference number you've put it down. So the ATAR that you get at the end of the year never changes. What changes with things like Cs and other factors is your selection rank for individual courses. And that's really important to know because of the information that you'll, I'll also talk about how the offers work as well before I talk about the ATAR profile. So every course has done this for every single applicant who applied for their course. When it comes time to make the offers, what we do is go down this list of selection ranks from top to bottom, and the top 4 with the highest selection ranks get the offers. But if we look at those same offers on the other side, in order of ATAR, you can see it wasn't the highest ATARs who got the offers, it was the highest selection ranks. So Emma, for example, had a higher ATAR than AJ, but she missed out because AJ had a higher selection rank. So it's important to understand that the selection rank is the most important factor because when you look online at the VTAC site, you will see the lowest ATAR to receive an offer, but you'll also see the lowest selection rank to receive an offer. The lowest ATAR to receive an offer does sound quite useful, but it can be a bit misleading because it just means that one person got in in this case AJ, with that particular ATAR. It doesn't mean everyone above that also got an offer. Whereas the lowest selection rank is the lowest selection rank to receive an offer, and everyone above that point did receive an offer. So that's the best guide, the lowest selection rank, when you're looking at how hard it might be to get into a course, because your selection rank only goes up from your ATAR. So if you were applying for this course and your ATAR was 85 or higher, you would have received an offer for this course. The last thing to remember when you're looking at this information is that the lowest selection rank is not set in advance. So it's not a guarantee or a cutoff. It's purely information about what happened last year as a guide. So you should never look at this information and use it to disqualify yourself from applying. Like, it would be a big mistake if you were to look at this information and say, oh, well, my ATAR is only 83, so I won't even bother applying for this course. That's a mistake for two reasons. First of all, because it's last year's information as a guide, and secondly, because you might be eligible for some of those adjustments that increases your selection rank. So it's useful information, but it is just a guide, and it might change for future years. Okay, if you have any questions about the selection process or where to find the course information, just pop those in the Q&A and we'll come to those at the end of the session. So I've found some courses now and figured out what we want to apply for. The next step is to actually put the application in, and that's all done online through the VTAC website. So you'll make an account with us, start your application, and then you will come to this screen, which is the most important one, where you can put in up to 8 different preferences for courses across the state. So one preference is a particular course at a particular campus of a university. So if you were looking to apply, for example, for a Bachelor of Arts at Monash University, that course at their Clayton campus will be a different code or a different preference from that course at their Caulfield campus. So keep in mind that you need to apply for both the course you want and the location where you want it. The really important thing to know at the preferences screen is that you won't find out about all of them. So it's really important to put them down in the order that you most want to get into them. So let's say, for example, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 preferences. What's going to happen at the end of the year is all of those courses are going to figure out if they want to make us an offer. Let's say in this example, the first preference says no, but the second preference says yes, third preference says yes, fourth preference says yes, and the fifth one says yes as well. We are not going to find out about all 4 of those offers. We are only going to receive an offer from the second preference because that was the highest preference that wanted to make an offer. We won't even find out about those lower preferences because those places will have already gone to someone else. So it is really important to make sure that you put them down in the order you actually want them. Because if your dream course is down here, but you get an offer for a higher preference, you'll never even find out about that lower preference. The other thing to know about the preferences is that it doesn't matter where you put a particular course on your preferences list, you've got the same chance of getting in. So for the same course, whether it's first or last or in the middle somewhere, you've got the same chance of getting in. There's no advantage to putting it first preference. There's no disadvantage to putting it down as your 8th preference. So just put them down in the order that you most want to do those courses. Now remember as well that you can keep changing your preferences after you submit them. So don't put off applying because you're not quite sure about the order. Just put them in as early as possible so you don't forget or miss the deadline, and you can keep changing your preferences throughout the year, including for a short time after your ATAR comes out. Once your preferences go in, there's a couple more things to do before you're finished applying. And the first one is to apply for SEAS, which is the Special Entry Access Scheme. This is the big special consideration program that's used by all the universities and most of the TAFEs in Victoria. And the way it works is that you fill out a single application form online through your VTAC account, and that then covers all of your preferences. So I'll talk about what's covered by this in a moment. Before I get there, I'll just explain what SEAS can actually do. Because SEAS is not a guaranteed offer, it's not a different way of applying. You're still competing with everyone else, you're still putting in preferences, and you still have to do the prerequisites, any kind of interviews or tests or other course requirements. But what Cs can do is increase your selection rank to compensate for disadvantage, and that means you've got a better chance of getting in. So in our example from earlier on, AJ applied for Cs and received that consideration, and that's one of the reasons why he got an offer ahead of Emma, even though his ATAR was actually lower. So Cs can make a difference to you getting an offer, but it won't necessarily guarantee you an offer. There are 4 categories for what's included in Cs. The first one is something that everyone should be applying for. It's called Category 1, Personal Information and Location, and it's really easy to apply for. You just tick a box and press Submit, and what you've done by ticking that box is said, yes, I give VTAC permission to use my personal information, like the school I go to, my address, and so on, to give me any kind of automatic adjustments or bonuses based on my demographic factors. So that includes things like if you live in a regional or remote area, because we know where you live. That includes if your school is underrepresented, because we know where you go to school, and all kinds of things like underrepresented gender, first in family to go to university, non-English speaking background, if you're an Indigenous Australian, and many other personal information factors. So everyone should tick that box and press Submit, and the worst possible outcome is that nothing changes and your application stays the same. So everyone tick Category 1, and then if any of the other categories apply to you, you should also apply for those. So I'll go through these relatively quickly because they won't apply to everyone, but we do have a lot of information on our website about how to apply for these categories. But briefly, the second category is about your financial background. So usually that's receipt of any Centrelink benefit or family tax benefit in your family. The third category is for any kind of disability or medical condition that affects you personally as a student. And the last category is very broad. It's called difficult circumstances, and that's for anything else beyond your control, which has negatively affected your education and is not covered by a previous category. If you're applying for special consideration, you might need some extra evidence or documentation. If you're applying for Category 1, there's no extra evidence needed. We already know your personal information, and that's fine. But if you are applying for any of the other 3 categories, you will need some written documentation, and I'll go through that really quickly now. Starting off with the financial category, there's a few different options. So if you receive a Centrelink benefit in your own name, you can do this first option here, where you just give us your Centrelink reference number, and we can process that automatically with Centrelink. But if you're in Year 12, most likely it's not in your own name, it's in your parent or guardian's name, in which case you're still eligible, but you can't give us their number because it doesn't match your name. So you've got to give us this middle option here of a scanned and uploaded copy of your parent or guardian's Centrelink benefit or family tax benefit statement. If you or your family are not eligible for any of those benefits, but you are still financially disadvantaged, you can apply instead with written statements, this third option here. For the last 2 categories, the medical and disability and difficult circumstances, for most applications there, you'll supply some written statements, something you write yourself called an impact statement, which talks about the condition and the educational impact, and a statement of support from someone like your doctor or someone at school who can verify the circumstances and the impact. There are a few situations where there are special processes, so have a look out for those ones if any of those things apply to you. So we've done our preferences, C's Category 1 at least. The very last step of actually applying is to also apply for scholarships. VTAC collects scholarship applications on behalf of most, but not all the universities. And it works, pardon me, in a pretty similar way to C's. You fill it out once, and that covers you for quite a few hundred different scholarships. So it is worth taking the time to fill this one out because there are lots of scholarships out there. You might hear the word scholarship and think, 99.95, and it's true, there are some academic scholarships, but there are also many more for other reasons, like access and equity, community leadership, community service, relocation, and so on. So it is worth everyone taking the time to have a look at the scholarships application. The other thing to remember is that as well as all the scholarships covered by the VTAC application, there are also heaps more in addition that require their own separate applications. So if you're keen for a scholarship, and why wouldn't you be? Our advice is to start with the VTAC application and then look for other scholarship opportunities that might be individual universities or at local community organisations. And your careers practitioner at school is probably a good source of information about local scholarships. If you have any questions about CSER scholarships, pop those in the Q&A and we'll get to those at the end of the session. So we've found some courses, applied for them, done season scholarships. Now we can kind of fast forward to mid-December when your ATAR comes out if you're in year 12 and doing VCE. So your ATAR will come out this year on Monday, the 13th of December, nice and early at 7 a.m. And you can access your ATAR online at the resultsin.atar.vic.edu.au website or in the free Results in ATAR app that's available now for iOS and Android phones. To use either of those services, you will need to register in advance. So at some point between August and December, make sure you visit that Results in ATAR website and choose a secure password to protect your results and make sure that you can access them easily on that morning when they're released. Once your ATAR comes out, you do have about 36 hours where you can change your preferences. And that's a really important deadline to keep in mind because there are 6 offer rounds, which are dates when offers are released. But even though there are 6, the number of offers that are made decreases a lot as we get close to the end of the last February round. So even though you can change your preferences between all of the rounds, if you're waiting until this point, right before the last round, to change your preferences and add your dream course, that course might already be full. There's very few offers left by that point. So the best time to finalize your preferences is here before the first round, which is the December round. And that's the deadline on the 14th of December. So that's the best time to finalize your preferences and maximize your chance of receiving an offer. So what happens on each of these offer round days? You'll get an email from VTAC that tells you what course you've been offered. And that same information is then available online in your VTAC account from 2 p.m. And if you gave permission when you applied, it'll be in the newspaper the next day. That just tells you what course you've been offered. That's followed up then by a second email that comes straight from the university, TAFE or college with instructions on how to actually enroll in the course. So to accept your offer, you don't tell VTAC, you tell the university, TAFE or college directly by following the instructions in the email that they've sent you by the deadline. If you want to defer the course, which means putting off the start for a year, that's often possible, but not for every course. And that's done at the time when you accept your offer once you've received it. If you want to reject the offer, you just do nothing and the offer will automatically expire on the deadline in the email that you've received. However, we strongly advise that you don't do that and you always accept an offer. The reason for that is that regardless of whether you accept or defer or reject, the offer process continues and you'll be automatically considered for any higher preference courses. So in this example, we've got someone who's been offered their 5th preference in the first round. This person should accept that offer even if they're still hoping for a higher preference offer from one of their top 4 preferences. The reason they should accept it is because if they just wait and see and don't accept and then don't get any further offers, by the time they find out they're not getting any further offers, that first offer would have already expired and they'd have nothing. So they should always accept. And then let's say, for example, they did get lucky and get an offer for their 2nd preference, for example, they could then accept that offer and go back and withdraw from the first offer they had received. And that would then go to someone else in the next round. So always accept unless you definitely don't want that course, even as a backup option. You do also have the opportunity to change your preferences between the rounds. So anything above what you've already been offered will be automatically considered. If this person changed their mind and they now wanted this 7th preference course, they could just change their preferences and move that up above what they've been offered, and that would then be considered in the next round. They can also add entirely new courses. They just need to make sure that it goes above what they've been offered, and that will then be considered in the next round. I'll pass back to Barney in a moment. I'm just going to talk to you a bit more about the types of support available. I've given you a lot of information already, and there is a lot more detailed written information on our website, as well as some videos you can see on our YouTube channel that go through some of this information in more detail. But you don't need to figure it out all yourself, because there is heaps of support available, and Barney is going to take you through that now.
Great, thanks, Michael, and thanks for that thorough introduction to the VTAC system. We've got a few questions that have come through, which I'll ask you in a second. And if you're still tuned in there, please do ask some further questions in the Q&A if you've got anything that you'd like Michael to clarify. But just before we do jump to that, Michael touched on some of the support that's available through the VTAC website. But as part of our role with TIS, we've also obviously pretty familiar with the different support services that are available from many of the different institutions. And when we talk about these, we like to talk about them as the 3 Ps. So I'll get Michael just to flick to that first slide there, and we'll kind of run through some of the different types of support that you can look to in the next 6 months, particularly if you're in year 12, but if you're in another year level over the coming years, the final few years of your schooling. So the 3 Ps of support, we have people, places, and publications. We tend to group the different types of information and support that you can find into those 3 groups. So the first P that we'll talk about is people. You've obviously heard from Michael. He's a very a well-versed person in the VTAC system, but you've also got your teachers. You've also got career teachers at your school, careers advisors, career practitioners. You might have family and friends that maybe potentially have gone through the VTAC system before, or have even just decided what to study before, and they can really help you not only in the next 6 months, but also with the rest of your potential career choices as well. You've also got institution representatives like myself and like some of the other staff who have been in the background answering questions. Over the coming weeks and months, there's plenty of online sessions and hopefully lots of in-person sessions as well, where you get the chance to talk to these institution representatives, and they're quite knowledgeable in their particular area, of course. So they're really beneficial for that particular institution that they work for. And of course, when we're talking about thinking what you might like to study and what different areas there are, you might talk to people in the industry or potentially students who are already studying in the field that you're interested in to get a real sense for what it is like to actually study in that area. So that's our first P, people. Our second P is places. So it's really important that you do try and experience exactly what some of these potential places are like before you make a decision about where it is that you'd like to study. There's different ways that you can do this. So listed there on the screen, we've got work experience. You can obviously do some work experience when you're in high school or potentially even just after high school to try and get a sense for what a workplace is like and what an industry might be like. Some of the institutions also run industry experience days, so you might be able to head along for a couple of hours to get a sense for what engineering might be like, or maybe what medicine might be like, or hairdressing might be like. They run these different sessions to really give you a sense about what it's what being in that industry is like. Campus visits, many schools go out to campuses and visit them and check out the physical facilities that many institutions offer, and that's a really important one, right? Because you want to get a sense for the place before you decide if it's somewhere that you'd like to study and spend potentially a couple of years of your life. And like I mentioned before, plenty of different open days and other online events as well. So if you can get out to as many as you can, you get a real sense for what it's like to study at that institution. And it might be really positive. You might walk onto a campus and go, yes, this is exactly what I want to do, but it could be the other way, and that's okay as well. You might feel that it's not the right spot for you. But at least now you know, and you're able to experience that. So the second P is places. The third and final P is publications. A pretty straightforward one, but there's plenty of course guides, lots of information available online, and many of your school's careers rooms will have numbers of course guides that you can go and have a browse through and potentially pick up a few copies. There's also some fantastic resources that Michael mentioned before on the VTAC system, as well as some online resources. And I'd also shout out here to the Australian government's job and course seeker website as well, which has all of the different courses across Australia. So there's plenty out there. You might have to do a little bit of digging to find it, but there's a lot of assistance there available to help you. So they're the 3 Ps of different type of support. So if we just move to that next one, thanks, Michael. Before we jump into questions, and I can see a few more have come through there as well, we just wanted to flag and promote our next upcoming event. So in the middle of September, we're running a final webinar for the year, and we're looking at the transition and moving away from home. So this is particularly for year 12 students who are thinking about moving on to higher education in 2022. We're going to be hearing from some students who have already done it and really talk about what that transition is like from high school into university or into TAFE or into college. And we'll also touch on some students who potentially have moved to actually study. So they might have moved from regional Victoria into Melbourne or vice versa to do the course that they were hoping to do. So if you scan that there, you can register for that event. It's still a couple of weeks away now, but you can secure yourself a spot in that session in mid-September, also via Zoom, such as today. So I think that brings us to the end of those slides. We've got a couple of questions that have come through. So Michael, I might get you to pop back on. There you are. I can see you there. Thanks for that presentation before. One of the first questions that came through was, can you tell me what subject adjustments actually are?
Yeah, sure. So subject adjustments are something where a course can say, if you've done some of these relevant VCA subjects, we'll give you a bit of a bonus, a bit of a boost for our particular course. So they're not required to get in, but if you have done those subjects, you actually got a better chance of getting in. For example, let's say an accounting bachelor degree might say if you've done VCA accounting or VCA maths, you get 2 extra bonus points for our course. Not every course offers these, but if they are available for a course, they are always listed in the essential requirements and the admission criteria section on VTAC Course Search. And it will tell you what subjects, what score you have to achieve, and also how many extra points you get for that particular course. So keep an eye out for those when you're looking at the course information.
Awesome. Thanks for that one, and thanks for that question before. Another one here is, if you're offered a course and then accepted, but then you get a second offer and you choose to accept that one, can you still defer that second offer?
Yeah, good question. So in general, deferring a course and accepting a course are basically the same thing. So deferring is something that you do as you accept the course. So you could accept and defer a first round offer and still be hoping for a higher preference offer. So you've got that locked in as a deferred course. You then in the second round get a higher preference offer, which is great. You can accept and defer that one, so that's locked in for you. Then you go back and withdraw from that first one. So the important things are to remember that you should only have one offer accepted at a time. So as soon as you accept your new offer, make sure you go back and withdraw from the first one. Otherwise, you might end up paying fees for both courses, which would not be great. And also that means that offer can go to someone else in the next round. And the other thing that's important to remember is to make sure you apply for deferral at the same time when you accept the course offer, because not every course allows you to defer, and some courses may only allow a limited number of people to defer that course. So do make sure you confirm that with the university, TAFE or college as soon as you get that offer.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. And I think you also mentioned before that the instructions for deferral will usually come from the institution. It won't be through the VTAC site.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. The next question here is, and it's a very relevant one, when do I make a VTAC account? Should I do one now? Should I do one when it opens? When should I be looking to actually create an account?
Yeah, great question. So you can't actually do it yet. We won't let you until the 2nd of August. But as soon as it hits 9 AM on the 2nd of August, you can go right ahead and make that account. So we do encourage you to do it relatively early in the process because things do tend to get busy, particularly if you're in year 12. So make an account without waiting. You won't need much to make an account, just your personal information, like your name and email address and phone number, your VCA student number, which if you don't know, you can ask your VCA coordinator or the careers practitioner at your school. And you'll also need your USI, your unique student identifier, to make an account. If you've done some vet study, you might already have a USI. If you don't have one, you can get one pretty quickly at the usi.gov.au website. And that is something that you can actually do now if you want to get started before the 2nd of August and get ready. You can get your USI or make sure you know what it is if you already have one.
Awesome. And speaking of numbers and everything, another question that's come through here is, where can I actually find my VCAA student number? I think you brought it up there when it was about registering for results.
Yeah, that's a common one. It's hard to keep track of. If you don't know your VCAA student number, it is the number that you write in your exam. So when you take the GAT, that's the number you'll be writing on the GAT. Your VCA coordinator at the school is usually the best person to give you that number. If for whatever reason you can't contact that person or anyone else at the school, you can write to VCAA to get your student number, but it's kind of a longer process where you have to show ID. So the easiest thing is just to ask your school, specifically the VCA coordinator.
Awesome. Cool. Next question, how can I show that my studies were significantly disrupted through the COVID lockdowns?
Yeah, great question and very relevant for almost everyone. And the answer to that is through Cs. So the category 4 of Cs, which is difficult circumstances, includes the impact of COVID-19 remote learning. So we know, of course, that particularly last year, everyone had to do remote learning at some point. So just having had to do remote learning itself isn't grounds for special consideration because everyone had to do that. So it affected everyone all at once. But we also know that some people were affected more than others. So if, for example, you had problems with internet access or didn't have a suitable laptop or tablet or had a particular subject where you couldn't access your practical materials, you might have been impacted more than other people. So we have a process as part of category 4 where you can indicate through tick boxes rather than having to write a written statement and indicate how much you were affected, and your school can verify that information directly to VTAC. So if you were affected by remote learning, either this year or last year, make sure you have a look at that. And if you had any of those particular aspects apply to you, it's definitely worth making sure that they're included as part of your category 4 Cs application.
Cool, very good. And thanks for that question, very relevant one, like you said, for everyone. Another one here, and I think I might be able to answer this one, are accommodation applications through VTAC or the institution? And I know from the institution I work for, all those accommodation applications won't be through VTAC, they'll be directly to the institution. I assume that's the same for many others, Michael?
Yes, that's right. So VTAC is just for the courses, season scholarships. Everything else, like accommodation, would be through the university, TAFE or college directly.
Yeah, awesome. Another one here, if I forget to apply for Cs, can I do it at a later date?
Basically, no. So that's why that Cs deadline, which is the 8th of October, is so important. And it's important to get onto it early because if you need some documentation, that also has to be submitted by that date. There is no way to make a late Cs application overall. There is one institution, that's Monash, which has a process for a late Cs application directly to Monash, but I believe that's only in very limited circumstances. So it is really important that if you're looking at applying for Cs, you get onto it early and make sure both your application and all supporting documentation is lodged by the 8th of October. And you can log into your VTAC account at any point. You can see a receipt for your application to make sure it says what you think it should say. And you can also see a list of all the documents that you've provided to VTAC to make sure all your evidence is there. So important to get onto that one as early as possible.
Awesome.
Good question.
Another one here is about applying interstate. Another one I think I know the answer for, but if I'm looking at applying for institutions, if for some reason I want to leave this great state of Victoria, which we won't judge you for, we won't hold it against you, can I do that through VTAC or do I have to apply through someone else?
Good question. VTAC, the V in VTAC is for Victoria, so we only handle applications for Victorian institutions and a very small number interstate. We have Victorian campuses. If you are looking to go interstate, there'll be an admission centre in every state. So for example, QTAC in Queensland, and you'll apply through the admission centre in that state. You can apply in as many states as you want to, but they are all separate applications. So the process will be similar, but might be a little bit different, and the dates might be a bit different as well. So be very organised if you are looking to apply interstate, because you'll have to manage those separate applications that are totally separate. So you might get an offer in New South Wales and an offer in Victoria, and obviously you'll pick Victoria as the best place to study once you do that. But yeah, so all separate applications.
All separate.
Oh, I should add as well, if you are looking to go interstate, the easiest thing to do is to go to the VTAC website and just search for the word interstate. We've got a page that lists all the admission centres in each state, so you can go straight there to apply for those ones.
Awesome. Another great resource there as well. One other question here. How do I know which courses make offers in each offer round? Do I just assume that all the courses are available in the December one, or how does that work?
Yeah, really good question. And the answer, unfortunately, is that the courses are not required to tell us or you in advance which rounds they'll participate in. The only round where all courses must make offers is the January round. Most courses, though, we know from experience, will make a significant amount of offers in December round, but they won't make all of their offers then. And that's important to keep in mind because you might find that you don't get the offer you're hoping for in December. That's not necessarily an indication that you're not going to get in. It might just be that that course is not making offers in that round, or they're not making all of their offers in that round because they're saving more for January when there are more students available and more results available. So if you're disappointed after the December round, you shouldn't remove courses from your preferences list because you think you haven't gotten in. You should leave them on your preferences if you still want to do those courses because you might receive an offer in January.
Great. Thanks for that. And our final question, there's two here, but I think they can kind of combine into one. So we might wrap it up after this one. If I don't necessarily want to study straight away in February next year, and I wanted to start, say, middle of next year or even in the year after, should I still apply through this coming VTAC period?
Yeah, good question. So in general, when you defer, that's usually only permitted for 1 year. In some cases, it might be for 2, but you need to arrange that specifically. So I'll answer the question as though you're planning to start studying in a year's time, which will be a standard deferral. Our advice will be to apply this year, get the offer and defer it, and that way it's guaranteed for you. So it's locked in, you don't need to apply for it again, you just rock up in a year's time and you're straight into that course. It also doesn't lock you in because if you do change your mind, you can always just apply again next year for a different course and withdraw from your deferred place. So it gives you the kind of security of knowing you've got something locked in to go ahead and start in a year's time, but also the flexibility of being able to withdraw and apply for something else if you decide to. The other option is just to wait and apply next year instead, and that might be okay if you don't have any idea what you want to do. But for people who have something in mind as a particular goal, our advice is to apply now and then defer.
Yeah, and I think from an institution perspective, we would say the same. I think it's much easier to do it now and hopefully secure it knowing that you've got the spot. There was a second part of that question, Michael, about mid-year. Is that something that students, if they wanted to just take 6 months off, should they look at applying and then deferring, or?
Yeah, it's a good question that I don't fully know the answer to because the deferral policies are up to each institution. So if they allow you to accept an offer and defer for 6 months, then I would suggest that. What I do before applying is contact the university, TAFE or colleges where you're thinking of applying and just ask them about that 6-month deferral. Don't know whether any of the reps today want to answer that question. Otherwise, you can apply for mid-year courses as well. Some of those are through VTAC and some of those are actually directly to the university that you're applying to. So keep an eye out for those, that kind of distinction if you are applying for mid-year next year. And that usually runs between April and June for those applications.
Great. Okay. And I know I said last one, but I've got one last one that's snuck in here. Are C's points capped? For example, can you only have a maximum of 5 of an adjustment, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's no overall answer because the C's adjustments are actually determined by each individual course or each individual institution. So the same set of circumstances might give you a different amount of consideration, a different bump in your selection rank, depending on what the course is and what the university, TAFE or college is. So some of the institutions will cap the amount of consideration you can receive, while others may have a different cap or no cap at all. So there's no overall answer. We can't release any of the C's information, that's kept confidential, but some of the universities particularly do put information on their websites about their maximum adjustments. So that's a good place to look for some of that information as a guide.
Perfect. All right, well, that brings us to the end. Thank you very much for your time today, Michael, and for all of the staff in the background as well. For those of you who have tuned in, we hope you found it really informative, and you've got a couple of weeks now to take all of that in and digest it before the VTAC system opens for those in Year 12. So yeah, once again, thank you very, very much for joining us. Make sure that you utilise the resources available on the VTAC website as well as the institution's websites, and we'll hopefully see you at our next event. So all the best for the second half of the year. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.